B1. Uh, I wanted to talk about the evolution of anti-black racism in America, especially, but there is some history there in Europe where it started. Essentially, there's a dispute between whether it was at the time colonial European powers or how the anti-black racism because of the dark melanated skin of us being thousands of year descendants of Africans from Middle Eastern and Arabic, how they were the first enslavers of black people. But I think a lot of history gets convoluted because there's many people telling their own different versions of history. But there are a lot of history has been written of how the Pope at the time, around the mid 1400s, 1440 to 1460, essentially, how he pretty much designated black Africans to be the number one slave class of the world, and how many different people have benefited from anti-black racism throughout the world, and even to this day, this still exists to a high level degree, especially here in America. But it's systemic from that time, and there's a lot of history that people may not understand of why certain groups, why majority of non-black groups, even tether groups, either anchor babies, look down on black Americans to a certain degree. But looking at the lineage of how all of this essentially occurred came out of Europe, how they designated black people to be the slave because we were very easily to be distinguishable amongst other people. Because there was a white person with a tan, they can look Arabic. And to this day, if you look at the US Census, people from the Middle East are considered to be white in America. I want you to look at that. Look at the Census Bureau and look at the demographics of race, and you'll see that a lot of Middle Eastern countries are considered to be white when they come to America. This is all by design, family, because they were some of the first enslavers. But this is the evolution of anti-black racism and how it's still systemic today. Now, this is not a fear-mongering tactic, us getting to a sob story of we oppress and we can't do this and we can't do that. There is a lot of subjugations. There are a lot of roadblocks and barriers. There is a ceiling that the system allows, but that doesn't mean that black people can't be successful. That doesn't mean that you can't be profitable, right? It's just that the great majority of us, they're going to make it very difficult for us to do that. Lack of information, lack of education, etc. But as we look at the colonial powers out of Europe and how they infested African countries with colonialism, they colonized Australia, which was black Aborigines that were there originally, and now the majority of Australians people look at as white, as your crocodile Dundee type of folk, but they're a whiter skin, lighter skin from Europe. But Australia started off as a penal colony for criminals for Europe. When you look at the entire continent of Africa and the many different countries, what you see is majority of African countries, with the exception of Ethiopia, were colonized by certain colonial groups. When you look at Mozambique, Angola, you look to Portugal. When you look at Senegal, Ivory Coast, uh, uh, all those countries, especially on west side of Africa, that speak French, you think of France. That one country in Africa on the, I think it's the west side, southwest. I think it's Guyana or something like that. They speak Spanish. One of their national languages is Spanish. Now the Italians couldn't take over the Ethiopians. They fought back and rebelled. But essentially, Ethiopians, would have been conquered if they didn't fight back against the Italians. Shout out goes out to them. You look at all the countries that their second national language is not of their tribe or anything like that, is English, French, Portuguese. And then we look down in South Africa, you had those folks from the Netherlands, the Danish, to colonize them. They speak Afrikaners, or they call them Boas. But the natural people of that land, they either speak some forms of Swahili. They speak Xhosa. Xhosa is that clicking language, but not. Xhosa only has 15 consonants of clicks. I learned this when I was in South Africa in Cape Town. Um, but what they have done, they're essentially colonized the world. Europe has colonized the world. The many different countries has colonized the world, and what they have done, they have implemented a color caste system. If you guys go back on my channel, look at an interview I did with a Indian United Kingdom lady. She's originally Indian, from India. Her name is Shweta Agrawal, and she wrote a book called The Black Rose. And that book was talking about the color caste system in India because the British colonized India for 90 years. When you look at Brazil, you had the indigenous people of Brazil mixed in with the enslaved Africans that were brought over there. And the majority of the enslaved Africans was brought to Brazil. So that's why they have a high population. That's why you'll see a lot of these black, beautiful people with certain type of hair textures because of the mixture of the indigenous people of Brazilians and the enslaved Africans. But then you also see white Brazilians are the descendants of those Portuguese who colonized Brazil. So we have to understand the color caste system to understand the very foundation of the evolution of anti-black racism, that the darker you are, the stupid, the dumber, the closer you are to an animal. And this still exists in some form today. And not that a lot of them, they don't understand the contributions that Black America have made to this country, let alone the systemic history that follow us, even to the point where we follow a certain religion, most likely Christianity, how that was curated by the Council of Nicaea in 325 AD. Also, the influence of Catholicism, of Islamic faith out of the Middle East. So there are a lot of things dealing with Black folk in general who are descendants of thousands of years from the continent of Africa. And to this day, when Black Americans delineate and we don't quote unquote accept the term, adopt the term of African American, is because there was there was a ethnogenesis that we became a new people, right? And that new people descended from the native Black Americans who were already on the American land. And you don't have to take my word for it, family. Just do your research, and I'll help you out. The only thing you have to do is research before 1619. There was 1526. And what you will find out is there were Spanish conquistadors. I believe the guy name was Vasquez. Him and some other Spanish conquistadors or enslavers came over with 100 enslaved Africans, and they had a shipwreck. And when they landed and they tried to build buildings and try to settle the land, but these 100 enslaved Africans rebelled. And when they rebelled and they ran off into the jungle, they ran off into the woods, the Spanish conquistadors wrote that our enslaved Africans rebelled and ran off into the woods with people that look like them. So when we look at the so-called Native Americans, you have to group Black Americans in that, because Europeans at the time looked at Black people as property, because we was of great value, and they took meticulous records. And so when you look at us descending, us coming out from a form of slavery, of shackles and chains in America, you then have to understand that we're looking at the descendants of slave owners and some of the ideology that has been passed down. I'm not stating that all white think this way, but there's a good number of them to influence society to a certain degree, that they look at Black people as less than because we came over here as property, never giving us intellectual prowess of the things that our forefathers, long before we came to America, long before the explorers that were here before slavery, of the things that were done in Africa. Like the first irrigation system was found in Uganda. The first C-section was done and found in Africa, where they use rice wine to sterilize the knife, which they cut the umbilical cord and remove the baby, etc. So there's a lot of things that black people in general, let alone black Americans, have contributed to the world. And these are the things that people can subjugate you and oppress you intellectually to believe that you're less than what your forefathers have already set the foundation of what you really are. And these are the things that we're not looking at because, again, a lot of us have to ask. If some people on one side of the aisle stating that there's no racism in America, there's no color caste system in America, then we have to look at the subjugation and the history of the evolution of anti-black racism and look at some of the causes. We don't have to deal in fear. We don't have to deal in rhetoric. We don't have to deal in bias. We have to deal in the facts, the things that are historically written and verifiable proof. That's the thing that kills people. How can you argue with the truth? You can argue with my bias. You can argue already. You can argue with the rant, but you can't argue with the facts. You can't argue with the innovations, the things that black Americans had contributed not only to America, but to society on the national stage as we know it. And to this day, if you don't believe that the propaganda and the perpetuating systematic media exploitation of our people has been done, where you have mass media and social media uplifting the lowbrow community. What's the lowbrow community? Unfortunately, every group of people, whether it be the white hillbillies or the white people who live in trailer parks, who walk around in Daisy Dukes and sip moonshine and play the banjo and do degenerate things and incest, they don't go to those communities and put cameras in front of them. But they would go to a low income ghetto community where black people are not doing as well, who may not have the same opportunity as other black folk, and they put a camera in front of them and they tell them, shake your ass. Yeah, you have a talent, you can rap. I understand you have this empowerment about yourself, but that's not hot. That's not going to make you money. What happened to Janae Monáe? What happened to Janae Monáe where she is now taking it all off? She was very covered. She was very covered, and she never made mainstream media. Then all of a sudden she takes off her clothes, and we knew the sister had a nice body. We knew that she was very gorgeous. We knew that she was in shape. What happened? What happened to Janae Monáe? Because they understand that degeneracy was being promoted, and I don't want to call out the sis name because I understand where a sexy red comes from. I understand where drill music comes from. Because if you put people in an environment that is not conducive to their success, but to their destruction, and then you say, I'm going to give you $1 million because I see that you can rhyme. I see that you can sing. I see that you can put poetry together and rap over a beat. I want to exploit that, but not for the reasons of empowerment. We have to understand, just because it's not in plain English where you can go read that these group of people or these people are promoting this particular music, then some people will blame our own people for the music they're being incentivized to make. Then I want to implore you with this. I want you to grow up in a home without a father. Joe Biden, 1994 crime bill, and Bill Clinton. I want you to grow up in a home without a father. I want you to grow up in a home with a single mother who's working 2 to 3 jobs just to pay for that rent and food and etc. And I want you to see how that child is essentially living a life on their own and is coming out of poverty. And most children who are born into poverty, listen, most children who are born into poverty stays in poverty. So if I come to you because you have a talent, and I say, if you say these things or you deliver this message, then you're going to make 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, 4. You can have that Lamborghini Urus. You can have that human link. You can have that Marc Jacobs. You can have that Rolex watch. Things that you can ever possibly imagine. How many people would subscribe to that? If you would have caught me at the right time, at the right level of income, and I mean low income, meaning that I'm cleaning up people's yards, I'm taking out people's trash, I'm cutting the grass, I'm doing this, that, and the other, and I'm getting $5 here, $10 there. One time, a white lady, I cut her whole grass, she gave me a quarter. And you come to me and you say, we can use you, and we're gonna give you $500,000. Most likely, before the empowerment message, before the spirit of Majara comes into my body, before I am enlightened with black empowerment and understand what has happened, the evolution that has occurred, I would have been one of those people to influence black people to do more destruction than what they're doing now. But when you look at other groups of people, when you look at Asians, they don't go into the Asian community and put cameras in front of their face. Even though they have rings of fraud, they have rings of stealing Cadillac converters, they have rings of stealing cars and taking them to chop shops. Just as well the Hispanic community. Each group of people, whether it be in the U.S. or in their country, they have a high level of crime, but you don't see mass media. You don't see the white powers go inside those countries. You don't see them go inside those neighborhoods and promote the very same degeneracy that they do as in the black community. You don't see Killer Mike's album. You don't see it getting the recognition that it should. He has a lot of empowering songs on it. You don't see that. Remember Joey Badass? He had that, it was a song or album called Americas, and he spelled it with 3 Ks. There was a message within the message. There was power within the message. This is the evolution of anti-black racism, because we need to understand how it's just not coming from one side. We have to understand it's just not coming from one people, but the color caste system has been infested inside of the world. So when other people come from all these different countries, whether it be the tether class out of Africa and the Caribbean, they come over here with a white ideology. They come over here that black Americans are lazy, that we're this and we're that. And even though to this day, majority of black Americans are in the middle class, and at the same time, unfortunately, we have one of the highest cases of homelessness. What are the systemic problems that is occurring? Are we just making excuses? Is it a lack of information? Is it a lack of motivation? Is it the systemic problems of males not being in the home? Is it social media? I would like to say that it's all of it, family, because these are the things that we're not looking at. These are the things that we're not toying. We would rather blame ourselves, okay? And we take partial blame. We take partial blame. Okay, we can't just blame everybody for all of our problems. We have to take partial blame. But we don't take all of the blame, family. We don't take all of the blame. We've had incentivized agents, right? When you look at the COINTELPRO, where they sent people who look like us, who means us harm, to dismantle our movements. We get attacked on all sides, but thus we have black folk who believe that all black folk have the same opportunity as every other people. This is the asinine stupidity out of some people not understanding the evolution of anti-black racism and how it's systemically here today. That's what a lot of people are not understanding. I'm not stating that we should blame all our problems on white people. We should blame all our problems on Asian or Hispanics and other groups of people. I'm not saying that. There's a self-accountability that we can do, but family, we have to look at those conditions of those people, because I used to live in Southeast DC, where people were strung out on drugs. Majority of people was on welfare. And you would have came to them people with a check and you told them to promote this message, they would. They would, because everybody has a inspiration, or they inspire to be wealthy or rich or live well or live comfortable. Nobody wants to live in squalor. Nobody wants to live in the hood, in the ghetto, in the favela, in shanty towns. Nobody wants to live that way. Nobody wants to worry about what meal is coming to them. I'm not stating excuse, but if you're going to call out these communities, what have you done to contribute to the success or the elevation of these people, rather just demonize these people? That's my point, family. That's my point. Yeah, we can talk about these people all damn day, but what are we doing as a community to lift these people up and give them information that they might not have? When I was stationed in JBLM, when I lived in Washington State, I was volunteering at the Boys and Girls Club in Lakewood, Washington for 6 years. I wanted to be an inspiration because I was a group home kid. The statistics were against me, and I'm gonna tell you why. I grew up without knowing my father. Until this day, I don't know who my father is. My mother died when I was 12. She died from lupus. My aunt raised me partially. There were some issues there, but most likely I grew up majority of my life in a group home. Football got me a scholarship. What if I didn't get that scholarship in football? And when I went off to college and people didn't see me for years, because I went from college to the military, people thought that I was dead, in jail, homeless, gay. I heard it all. And my cousin would tell people, my cousin in the military, he's actually doing well for himself. But that's what people will think about you when you decide to remove yourself and make choices that will be conducive to your success. I'm not stating, when we look at the evolution of anti-black racism in America, I'm not telling people to make excuses for yourself that we are an oppressed group, which is true. That has been systematic, which is true. That has been ordained, approved, and governed by the U.S. government, which is true. Because some people, well, I see black people doing well. I'm doing well. I just had to go out and get it. Yeah, there's going to be a great many of us who can go out and grab the bag, go out and do great things. But the vast majority of us are not going to have the same opportunities as other people. It's going to be a lack of information, because the system of white supremacy doesn't just attack you one way. It paints a broad it paints a broad picture of how they want the world to see black folk. Then let alone in America, the reason why we are ignored, the reason why we get benign neglect is because they know that there is a debt that is owed to black Americans, U.S. freedmen, aka Foundational Black Americans. They know this, family. They know that there is a debt. And people say, okay, what will reparations look like? It will look like the same thing that the Native Americans received. It will be cash checks, tax exemption status, shit, throw in some casinos, okay? Anti-black hate crime bill. This is easy. And people are like, well, my tax dollars aren't going to your reparations. Now, I would ask this questions to other groups of people. I'll say, well, what if the Native Americans get reparations? Are you for or against that? Oh, I'm against that too. Well, they're already getting it. Now what? Are you going to protest against that? Absolutely not. This has been accepted by non-black people that Native Americans, who actually are, there are some federally recognized Black American Native American tribes. Look it up, family. There are actually federal recognized. But when we look at this, we have black people actually stating that black Americans, Foundational Black Americans, U.S. freedmen, stating that they are against reparations. Here's my question to those folk who are against reparations, who are foundational Black Americans. If you wasn't successful, because there's always the successful people who are saying this bullshit. If you wasn't successful, would you be for reparations? They can't answer that because they're successful. You see, you have to ask people when they're at their lowest. You have to ask people when they're at their brokest, and you teach them the history. You teach them the history when they're at their lowest. Then ask them, "Are you for reparations?" See what they say. Have you noticed that majority of our Black brothers and sisters, when they get out of jail, they're more educated than ever before? Because the only thing that they had was time. So instead of spewing rhetoric and propaganda and fear mongering on the internet and social media, they go in, they read books, they learn the law, they come out and be philosophers. They know the history, they know factual, they know a lot of things. Understand the evolution of anti-Black racism in American family, and understand that people who are trying to put you up on game, trying to put you up on code, is this not trying to fearmonger you and tell you that you're oppressed, that you can't do nothing? Yes, there's absolutely something that you can do. A lot of you are already getting off your ass, getting the bag, going to the bag, working hard, 2 or 3 jobs, part-time jobs. You're doing all sorts of side hustles just to make it in America with these high inflation prices. And that's why I kind of got off the Kamala kick as far as identity politics, whether she's Black or Indian. I did my pieces on it. You can check it out on my channel, family, how I spoke about Kamala Harris and identity politics, and also did a special on her of her actual family, allegedly, when it comes to her race. But none of those things matter. The only thing that matters for us is 2 things: your local and state policies. First, that's going to impact your life um, um, sooner than the federal elections. And then, what are the policies of Kamala Harris and Donald Trump? See, Donald Trump can be as racist, as dumb, as illiterate, as rude as hell. But I guarantee you, if Donald Trump said, "I'm giving foundational Black Americans reparations in the form of a check. I'm going to give you your land grants. I'm going to give you your tax exemption status," who won't be signing up? Is it about the politician or the politician in place, or is it about the policies that they're going to implement that may or may not benefit you? Because if Donald Trump says he's giving us reparations and write a memorandum for record, or he puts it in a inclusionary executive order, are you still going to vote for Kamala Harris? And then vice versa. If Kamala Harris do that, are you going to vote for Donald Trump if she's going to give us reparations or an anti-hate crime bill or something tangible, something that will benefit the Black community? See, let's stop the identity politics. Let's stop playing this game that I'm a Democrat, blue no matter who, or red. If I don't vote red, then everybody's dead. Some stupid shit. How about we look at the policies? When they're going to come out with policies, let's look up the policies of Kamala Harris, and not this trickle down economics. Well, if I incentivize these people, then it's going to trickle down to the Black community. No, there's no more trickling down. There's no more tricks. Black folk, we should not be just on board with the Democratic Party. We shouldn't just be on board with the Republican Party. We should be on board with the policies. How are these policies going to affect Black America? How they're going to benefit Black America? And that's why you shouldn't be a party hoe. Oh, I'm a Democrat, I'm a liberal because, oh, so you're for transgender inside of females' bathrooms in elementary schools. You're for that. There's no hate. There's no hate towards the LGBT community, but there are certain things that children should be influenced. You don't want your children influenced before they should be. You don't want that. When you really map down, I hate to say this, don't turn off. Don't turn off. I hate to say it. When you map down what conservatives, not Republicans, what conservative values are and what liberal values are, would you know that majority of Black Americans are probably conservative, because before LBJ, Lyndon B. Johnson, before he wrote into law with the pressure from the civil rights movement for the Civil Rights Act from Martin Luther King, one of our black empowerment leaders, we were Republicans. Majority of black Americans were Republican because we believed in God and country, right? Majority of black Americans, over 70% of black Americans, are Christians. We believed in doing for self. We believed in building businesses. That's why we had multiple Black Wall Streets, not this Tulsa, Oklahoma. We also had Raleigh, Durham, Atlanta, Georgia. We had black business districts. We had black meccas all over America. Why you think when you look at black massacres in the U.S., you see them United States spread. When you go look at the other Black Wall Street, look it up, fact check me, please. Look up the other Black Wall Streets. You're going to see where all these other Black Wall Streets were. So when they say, you lazy nigga, get off your ass, and they don't even know what we've done. They don't understand that every time that black people have pulled themselves up by their so-called bootstraps, even though we didn't have anything because we got it out the mud, you will see oppression, subjugation, and destruction the same way they did Emmett Till, the same way they bombed Tulsa, Oklahoma, the same way they did the banking crisis. You will see this time after time after time after time again that some black man whistled, touched, yelled, or scared a white woman. Then all of these white people came out of nowhere and just destroyed everything that black people have made. And it was all behind lies. We now have the white people who have already died, and white people in the deathbed said that black kid, that black man never said or raped me or did any of these things. This is what we're facing. This is what we're facing. Because when I look at the two political parties, when I look at the two political pundits and Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, I'm seeing puppets. Because we can say Donald Trump is racist. Okay, cool. What if his policy benefit black Americans? Are you still going to vote for Kamala Harris, or are you going to vote for Donald Trump? Now, if you're a Trumper or you're a MAGA or you're a Republican, whatever the case may be, vice versa, if Kamala Harris comes out with policies that are going to benefit the black community, which I don't see none yet, just the same as Trump don't see none yet, but nonetheless, if she does, are you still going to vote Republican? This is the problem when you're not informed about what neither two sides have done since we came out of slavery. Has there been black progress? Some. Black progress is not the freedom of movement. That's your constitutional right. Black progress is not a decrease of discrimination. No. You know what they call that? They call that, where you got civil rights was for everybody. Where you got affirmative action was for everybody. Where you got DEI was for everybody. If you look around, family, majority of non-black people are being benefited by DEI, by affirmative action, by civil rights. Look left, right, up, and down, and look at the people who work with you. What the majority of them are if they're not white. And I'm not talking about Hispanics. Look at your tech jobs. Look at your high function program managers. Look at who those people are. And you will see exactly what I'm talking about. Because they now have only replaced the low skilled workers. Okay. They have not only replaced the low skilled workers, but they have also replaced the high skilled IT jobs as well. This is about truth and information versus bias, rhetoric, and fear mongering. Because this is not this about. Because there's a lot that we can do. But it starts on the state and local levels, and then we look at federal. But most importantly, it really starts with you. It really starts with you and your family. Black men, stand up, take charge, raise your children as should they go, respect that black woman, control your emotions, be logical, okay? Be assertive, be positive, Learn how to learn when to speak and when not to speak. And black women, I'm not gonna speak on it. I have a beautiful black wife, and if she was here, she just ran it because that's why I got dark. She closed the garage. I'm just sitting in the car in the house, but she would tell you her piece about it. I don't know the last time me and my wife had an argument. It's probably been about a year. But understand where this anti-black racism come from, and that the experiences of people with the discrimination that we've have endured, that these are not these very singular anecdotal examples. Just because it has not happened to you does not mean it doesn't exist. So when I see a Tim Scott Republican, when I see people in the Democratic Party and Republican Party tell me that America isn't a racist country, and I'm just like, how in the hell did you come to that conclusion? How in the hell did you come to the conclusion that America isn't a racist country, where it was built on anti-black racism, where the country was built on enslavement of one people, where they actually have Jim Crow laws that subjugated one group of people, which was the very foundation of the wealth of America? How? How dumb can you be? Should that slow you down? Should that stop you from being successful? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But we are not all afforded the same opportunities, family. Let me tell you, let me just give you something to think about. Take for instance me. I'm building a Fortune 500 company. Who do you believe I'm going to hire? Am I going to go out and hire a bunch of white people? I'm going to have white people in my company. Am I going to go out and hire a lot of Hispanic people, a lot of Asian people? I'm going to have them in my company. But the vast majority of the people that work with me are going to be, they're going to be black. Because when I walk around my company, I want to see people that look like me. So I understand why a majority of these businesses have a certain demographics of people. When Indians come here and start businesses, they hire a majority of Indians. I get it. You're going to want to work with people who look and favor and culturally are like with you. So what does that tell us? We have to go back out and build. We have to go back out and build. And sometimes you have to do things that you don't want to do so you can do the things that you want to do. Sometimes you might have to work for that white employer. Sometimes you have to work for that Hispanic and that Asian employer until you save up your money and build your own, and then you can start employing the people that you want to employ. Now, some people say, oh, we're getting into colorism and this, where you're just going to hire black people, or you're just going to hire white people. No, this is how the game is played. Majority of people hire people that look like them. Majority of people hire people that look like them. Yeah, there's countries that preach diversity. Yeah, there's demographics. Yeah, there's different populations of certain people with certain skills and technical certifications and blah, 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 blah. But tell me this. You've been on a job for 10 years. You have all the correct certifications, education from the right universities, from the right organizations. But Bill comes in with 5 years experience. You got 10 years experience. You went to more prestigious schools, and somehow Bill got the position. Did Bill know someone in the company? Did Bill is a family member of somebody? Or did Bill have the right complexion? I'm just asking questions because I know some of you may experience it. But that's just the nature of the beast. That's just the nature of the beast, family. So again, here's the point. Understand the evolution of anti-black racism and how these things stem throughout America. But truly understand what your people have done, what your people are doing, and look to the future of what you can do when it comes for yourself and your children and your family alike. Though some of your family cannot be saved. Some of your family you can influence, you can inspire, you can motivate, you can inform. Some of them can't just grasp what you're going to put down. So unfortunately, some of them have to be left behind because we understand the environments that we come from. We understand the lack of resources that we have. We understand the lack of positive black male role models in our communities. We understand. Some of them left by choice, some of them left by force, a great majority of them. But if we don't understand these different distinctive dynamics, then we would never understand the state of Black America. We would never understand it. You guys have a great and wonderful day. I just got finished a bike ride, but you guys have a good one. All right, I'm out. Let me see if I can close this out.